my title is, I think, vulnerability in womanhood or something like that. I forgot what the heck I titled it already. Isn't that crazy? I just did it like a few minutes ago. Got caught up doing something. Now I can't remember the title of my video here. But I wanted to talk about basically vulnerability in womanhood and friendships. I think that's what I titled it. So if you don't know who I am, I'm the Black Opinionated Woman, also known as a Bo. I mean, and for those of you who really just don't know, Bo literally is just the letters for Black Opinionated Woman. So sometimes you just have to call out the obvious. So, yeah. So anyway, I want to give my Bo thoughts on vulnerability in womanhood and friendships. Now, let me just say this. I'm going to start off. I'm going to start off by saying that I'm not so sure if vulnerability is the word I want to use. Maybe it's honesty. I don't know. So what I have found is that the older that I have gotten is that I feel like my relationships with women have been more vulnerable. Or let me rephrase that. I allowed for more vulnerability and honesty. When you're younger, and let me just say this, I feel like I am probably going to miss the mark a little bit. So when I was younger, excuse me, I would say the large majority of my friendships and relationships were with men. Now, that was for a variety of reasons. One, I was in a career field that was largely dominated by men, so I didn't have the opportunity to meet many women at the time. Two, I was an officer in the Air Force a long time ago. I was an Air Force officer for about 5+ years. So the career field that I was in at the time, you know, I by virtue of what I do and where I was and where I was living, it was dominated by men. So, not that there weren't women, but the opportunities to have lots of relationships with women were, I didn't have the same opportunities, okay? So, that's why I say I might miss the mark a little bit. However, I did have female relationships, friendships, that type of thing. Now, if you notice, I go back and forth between saying friendships and relationships because I don't believe that every person you come into is really your friend. Okay. My situation was I felt like I had relationships for a period of time. They were relationships. Maybe even situationships because people that I honestly thought were my friends were not. And it's a variety of reasons. That's neither here nor there. So, when I was younger, like I said, let me get this right. Does this seem like all off? Okay, so when I was younger, many of my relationships or friendships were with men by virtue of my environment and career field and circumstances, okay? But when I had my female friendships / relationships, I think it was during a time when everyone is, especially in your 20s, everyone's trying to figure it out. Now, you think you know what you're doing, and you think you know what you're talking about in your 20s, right? It's one of those things like, when you know, you know. And sometimes when you're in it, you can't see the forest for the hills. Is that the saying? I don't know. I think that's the saying. But I remember in my 20s, you're really trying to figure it out. You're trying to get your career started. You're trying to increase your income. You want to get married. You want to have children. There's all these things. And what happens is you're in the prime of your life. And, you know, when I look back, that was prime competition. Now, I'm saying what I'm saying. I want you to listen. It's prime competition. And depending on the types of female relationships you have, okay? If your relationships are built based around an activity, that's one thing. But if it's not built around an activity, it can get quite interesting. I've seen some subversive behavior happen. or take place rather. There was a lot that was going on. But I think what happens is because you're in prime competition mode in your 20s, that's not to say that you can't have close friendships and stuff like that, because of course you can. But when you're in prime competition mode, oftentimes you don't allow yourself to be vulnerable. Now, I know I paused on that because I wanted that to sink in. You're not allowing for yourself to be vulnerable. You're not allowing for people to really know your frailties. Not that you need to broadcast them anyway, right? Sorry, my little ponytail is situational back there. I can't lean my head back because it's in the way. So, during the earlier part of your womanhood journey, I hate saying it because everything's a journey. Everyone's like, I'm on my so journey. But in your womanhood journey, what happens is the people that you're in relationship with during that time may really be seasonal. I say this, for example, if you're 25 and you're single but you're dating, and now let's say you tack on a decade, maybe you're married with children, maybe you've had to move your career for your husband's career or whatever, right? Well, relationships change, environments change, people change. During that time, you're in prime competition mode. And so, like I said, I feel like I'm not really making sense of this. In my mind, I know what I'm trying to say. When you're in prime competition mode, people don't want to be vulnerable unless you've had a friend for a really, really long time. Of course, look, this isn't for every scenario, right? I mean, so if it doesn't apply, it doesn't apply. But what I am saying is, back then, in your journey, you're trying to figure out who you are, what you stand for, what is it that you really want? What does your life look like? Is it with career? Is it with children? Is it with a husband? Is it with all these things? And that's not to say that you don't foster friendships, but what I will say is that's a completely different time of your life than when you are, for example, right now, I'm 45. So when I look back, I know I wasn't as vulnerable with a lot of women too, because I've seen the behaviors of what happens when people are in prime competition, right? Back in my theater finer younger days, depending on what's going on, I was trying to kill you if I was trying to catch somebody, right? So what I'm saying is, when you are in that environment and you have those kinds of relationships, that's not to say that you can't be vulnerable. What I am saying is you are in prime competition mode. And oftentimes, women aren't necessarily being fully vulnerable. Some are. And as you get older, let's say you fast forward 10 years, 15 years, whatever it is. You're in your late 30s, maybe early 40s or something like that. You will have lived some life in between. And the things that were important to you then are not the same things that are important to you now. Oftentimes you're not in competition. You're not. Okay? Forget what everybody else is saying out here in these streets. By the time you get to 40, 45, and look, like I said, we can find all kinds of variations of relationships and stages of life that people are in. I'm just taking a cross section across women. I don't care about what race is right now, okay? Because that when you start injecting race, it's a little bit more of a pointed conversation. We have a slightly different conversation if I start applying the blackity black part. I'm just going to take a cross section across women in general. If you fast forward 15, 20 years into the future, who you are at 40 and 45 is different than when you were 25, 30 years old. The things that you care about are completely different, okay? Most likely, you're not in competition for a significant other. You're not rushing to have children, okay? If it doesn't apply, it doesn't apply. I just want you to catch the message. When you fast forward 15 plus years into the future, the things you care about are not what you cared about in your 20s. So some of the things that you're thinking about are things like your health, right? You start thinking about your purpose, right? Am I more than just a mom? Am I more than just a wife? Should I change careers? Blah, 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 blah. You start thinking about other things that hold weight, like your parents. If you're raising children, you start thinking about, like, how can I make sure that they are the best version of themselves? How can they be functioning members in society? That type of thing. You're not concerned about competing with women, unless you're competing with your children. That's a whole conversation. I think I've done a video on that maybe months ago. What you're doing in your 20s versus what you're doing in your 40s, it's just different. So I'm not competing with some 20-something-year-olds. So like right now, when I see 20-somethings out there, like me personally, I can speak just for me. I love looking at the youth. I love looking at their beauty, their creativity, their humor. I really enjoy the young people, even though most people who are older than me would say I'm young, right? When I watch them and I watch how they take such painstaking care towards their hair, their face, and their body, stuff like that, as they should. Because at that point in their lives, they are in competition for me. And I don't see anything wrong with it. And so I can understand why sometimes the relationships can be tenuous too, because you're in prime competition mode. All right? And what I'm saying is, if you go back to the title, I was talking about vulnerability and womanhood and friendships. I have personally found, as I've gotten older, my relationships with women, they seem to be more vulnerable, or they allow for more vulnerability and honesty. I have found that many of the women I talk to, they're so all the way straight up. And let me tell you, I mean, I live around a whole bunch of people who don't like me, but I find the conversations to be really interesting conversations, because some of the shiggity that you cared about, then you don't even care about. Nobody cares. And I realized when we would have these conversations, like really great conversations, it was like it just happened. And I remember not even thinking about it. Now, I'm not saying I tell all my deep, dark secrets, but what I am seeing is the kinds of conversations and relationships you have, fast forward 20 years, 15 years, whatever it is, it's just different. And so when you get together and you commune and you fellowship with each other, I find that when you have really great conversations, or when you're getting together, and it's not all the time, right? Because your cycles are limited. Those moments have become so much more precious, and I value my friendships and relationships. I value them so much more. And oddly enough, because I am older, I do find that I'm really enjoying my woman friendships. And enjoying, well, I don't know if I'm enjoying the process of womanhood, because I'm like, why does my back hurt, right? I just find that those relationships I'm enjoying. And like I said, in the past, I had a lot of male friendships and relationships, primarily based off of environment, primarily based off of career, but also it was easier. I was pretty, I was slim, I enjoyed the humor. Yeah, I mean, when I look back, I mean, in some ways, maybe I was even like a pick-me, right? But I didn't have to compete all the time, even though I was competitive. I'm just saying. What I am saying is, now that my relationships with women do allow for more vulnerability and honesty, transparency. And that doesn't mean sharing all your business, but it's just okay to say, you know what, I don't have it all figured out today. You know, or like, I'm struggling. Or, man, I don't know what I'm going to do with this. What do you think? Or, you know, somebody say, hey, you know what, we had to do this. I had to show some tough love, or whatever it is. You know, when I was younger, I kept a lot of cards close to the chest. I found that the relationships I had with people were definitely, they were, yeah, So anyway, I just wanted to say, look, whoops, my phone. Everybody wants to call when I'm. So yeah, I just wanted to say, the older you get, your relationships change, and I think it allows for more vulnerability and honesty. And like I said, this isn't like every time you're having a conversation. No, 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 no. I don't want to give that impression. What I am saying is, you get to the point where the things that you cared about then, you don't care about now. And it's not that you don't care about keeping yourself up or any of those things, but those things aren't the things that matter to you right now. What matters is making sure you're healthy, or your children are healthy, or that your parents are doing well. Are you financially set for retirement? Are you, all these things. There's a lot of things that, yes, I like to take the back roads. As you guys can see, I take back roads into work. There's a lot that, that you think about, and those things that you don't think about in your 20s, right? You remember, you're in prime competition. That's prime competition time, as you should be. I'm not saying you shouldn't have great friendships and relationships, because you really should, but when you're younger, you're competing, you're in competition for the job, for that mate. You got to keep your body up, you got to do all these things, whether we want to accept it or not. And I just want to say, for the record, there's nothing wrong with that. Men and women, we're supposed to compete for each other. Men should be peacocking, and girls should be looking like, you understand what I mean? But anyway, that's all I wanted to say. Was I felt like now the relationships that I have with women are just better than when I had when I was younger. I think most of the women I know, they don't care about a lot of the shenanigans. I mean, we laugh and giggle at stuff just like somebody who's 25, but ultimately there's just certain things we don't care about, that we just don't dedicate our cycles to. We just don't. We're like, okay. Like the things that you thought you cared about. I remember, this is just such a random anecdotal thing. I remember when I was younger, I think I was in middle school, and I was so skinny and so awkward. And I remember I tripped over something. It was in front of some boy I liked, who clearly was not looking at me at all. Like, he was not even trying to look my way. But I don't even remember who the boy is now. But I remember when I was in middle school, I had tripped over something. It was like a little stumble, and I was so embarrassed. So embarrassed. I didn't even fall, but it was the fact that I stumbled from school. Now think about how the progression as you get older, things you don't care about. Now, if I stumble over something today, I'm gonna be more like, hey, is my back here? What's going on? Wait, what? I just want to make sure I'm okay. I'm like, look, hey, it is what it is. I'm like, hey, you better pick me up if you see me fall too. I mean, I'm just trying to get perspective. It's probably not the best one. I'm trying to think. I remember when I was in my 20s, and I remember when I was dating, and I remember how, like, when you meet somebody and you're all excited and you want to talk all the time, right? And you're like waiting for each other's call. You're like, oh, is he gonna call? I hope he calls, but I'm not gonna call because I just called him yesterday. Let's see if he calls. Like, and then and now I'm more like, my husband and I, we talk to each other for like 5 minutes. Like, we love each other, but we're just kind of like, hey, blah, 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 blah. Sometimes we joke or whatever, but we're like, all right, catch you later. It's like, there's no, like, we're just kind of like, all right, bye. Like, we're like, I'll catch up with you in a little bit. Like, it's just like the things that you care about and you put so much credence into. Now, I kept it lighthearted because I don't want to talk about anything like too deep. But the point I'm making is, you get older, the things that you are interested in change, the things that you value change, and also your relationships with women, they change, So you're no longer in competition mode. As you get older, you're not competing with each other. You're more like, hey, we're in this womanhood thing together, okay? And so when you have your conversations, they're much more predicated on honesty and vulnerability. Now, let me just say this. I think the only time I really don't see honesty in these relationships is when women want to pretend like their kids are perfect. That's another conversation. But generally speaking, most women I know, by the time you get to be 40, 45, 50 years old, you're not in competition for mates and that type of thing. And your relationships with women change because you're not in competition with each other. You're not. You're on some other kind of stuff. Okay? You're like, okay, so look, this is what you need to do. You need to have a look. I think we need a wine night. Like those are conversations. Like, look, we need a wine night, and I think we need to. No kids, and we're gonna go here. We're gonna have our little snacks. We're gonna have a little wine. That's where you're at with each other. All right, so I've yammered on for quite a bit of time. I want to thank my bows and bow ties for joining in. And look, let me just say something because I know I'm going to be really tacky because that's just how I am. But if you haven't already subscribed, what is your problem? Go ahead and hit the subscribe button. Look, now we're going to stop the shenanigans. I think some of you guys have a commitment problem. We need to talk about it. I think you have a commitment problem. I used to talk about when I first started doing this, I think I called it the 5 S's. Go ahead and subscribe. Show your support by liking this video. See it all the way through. Share it with someone and say something in the comments. The significance of no, this truck is not pulling out in front of me while I'm trying to go to work. So the significance of the 5 S's, sorry, my ADD just kicked all the way in. The significance of this is by you doing one of those things, it tells the algorithm, hey, she's amazing in every way and she can do no wrong. I should go ahead and put her in front of other people. So go ahead, give me the thumbs up, go ahead and subscribe. And that's just where I'm at with it. Thank you. All right. I'll have to upload a much better thumbnail later because obviously I'm recording this as I'm driving. So I'm going to get off as I come through the circle so I don't like kill myself. And I will catch you guys later. Go ahead and subscribe.